Hi, welcome to Manas Shil YouTube channel. Before we start, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Let's start the video. If you haven't watched the previous video, I'll link it in the description box, or you can click here. Chapter 3. Reminiscences of the Clowns. Kagali's past life. They were currently in a collaborative relationship because their interests were aligned. As soon as one of them achieved their goals, there was a good chance they'd go back to being adversaries. He hesitated to reinforce such an opponent, but it would be an effective strategy to ruin the world. That'll be put on hold. We'll think about it then. Understood. I'm not saying you have to. The conversation about the Seraphim was postponed and there turned to the question of who should incarnate. Then, after all, we should use Zelario as a reincarnation. Well, that's fine. Feldway is right about eliminating uncertainties. No objections. Thus, both sides agreed. We'll go with Zelario's idea. Are you okay with that? Feldway asked his group. It was posed as a question, but the decision was already made. There was no way that Dallas and the others could argue with him, since they would be considered weak if they objected. Thus, it was decided that Zelario and the others would possess the undead elves, and at the same time, unleash the wills that resided in their bodies. With the decision made, the incarnation ceremony began. This time, the incarnation would be performed by Zelario and 5 of his subordinates. Also, Abera and Oma. Kagali would be in charge of imbuing the undead elf with an ego. What are they going to do with the extra one? When Kagali wondered this, her eyes met Feldway's. It's Kagali, isn't it? Kondu's death seems to have broken your hold, but what are you planning to do about it? This is it, Kagali braced herself. Will you let me go? Kagali asked cautiously, unsure of how much was allowed to be said. There was a surprising response. After this ritual is over, I don't mind. What? If that's the case, your role will be finished once you have created the undead elves as a substitute. You've done enough good, so if you want, I'll send you back to Earth. No way, Kagali thought, confused. At best, she thought she'd be locked up. At worst, she was prepared to be punished. And yet, she was allowed to escape. There was no lie in Feldway's words. As such, there was no need for a complicated negotiation. The difference in power was so obvious that Kagali was of no use for him. Kagali couldn't think of any reason to deceive such a person, so she thought it safe to assume that his words were true. In that case, Kagali treaded on thin ice as she made her next request. Is it possible for you to break Yuki-sama's control and let us go with him? It was Michael who answered that question. I can't allow that. Because the ultimate skill Greedy King, Mammon, owned by Yuki, Kagurazaka, is also beneficial to me. For Michael, Yuki's power was of great use, regardless of his personal fighting ability. Therefore, he rejected the idea of releasing him. Kagali, understanding this, stopped wishing for more. What should I do? Is it okay to run away? Feldway added on to Kagali. If it's just you and the 2 of them, I can send you all back. However, the Cardinal world will be rough. I hate the people on Earth. Not that I need the death of every living thing to achieve my goal, but it will inevitably be engulfed in flames in a war with those who stand in our way. But that is a punishment. Those whom Valdanava-sama loved have betrayed that love. Sanctions will be necessary. Kagali felt a chill run down her spine as his words were spoken so plainly. To be engulfed in flames would mean that the whole world would be affected by the war. In that case, it was hard to say that the place they escaped to would be safe. Yuki was still under their control, and if the absolute powerhouses here went on a rampage, there would be no safe place on Earth. In the first place, Kagali thought. We wanted to create a country where we could live happily, but it would be too vain to hope for that under these circumstances. In this situation, the most important thing is to survive. And to do that, we need power. It might have been a foolish decision. But at the time, it seemed to Kagali that this was the only correct answer. That's why she stated what she wished. Please give me an undead elf, and hopefully, allow me to carry a seraphim in this body. Kagali wished. She hoped to abandon her fragile body and be reborn as undead elf. Then, she would take in the seraphim and gain great power. She needed power. Because if you have power, nothing more can be taken from you. Kagali's words had no chance of winning, but no one argued with her. Dino had a dumbfounded expression, but said nothing. Zelario and Abera only followed Michael's decision. And the insector was indifferent. He was not interested in the weak. In the midst of these reactions, Michael nodded. Interesting. But I will not tolerate betrayal. If you accept my ultimate enchantment, I will grant you your wish. I swear I will not betray you. And I will accept your dominion. The deal was made. To make an undead elf develop an ego is equivalent to awakening its original personality. In some cases, the strongest will prevails, while in other cases, a new ego is born from a mixture of the two. Even for Kagali, the outcome was unknown. As one could see from Tyr and Footman, it was difficult to invoke a targeted personality. So even Kagali herself had to gamble whether her ego would win or not. But even so, she knew she had to obtain the power. So, after awakening the 8 egos, she performed an awakening ritual on her own undead elf. After that, she escaped from the homunculus and transferred into the undead elf. Thus, the ritual ended. As was expected, the result was Zelario wakes up. He realizes that he is wrapped in the armor of flesh, and that he can wield great power in the cardinal world. A bear wakes up. She proves the pride in her heart that her noble will cannot be defeated by anyone. When Dallas was about to wake up, he realized that there was another person inside him. His name was Torniad, and he was a man of great ambition. He felt that his skills as a warrior had become his own, and he was convinced that Dallas himself had greatly increased his presence. Nice wakes up. She became stronger at the command, but she was no different. Her strong ego is still intact. Oma wakes up. With her indomitable will intact, she embraces a being of similar sensibilities. Their name was Zero, but now they were Oma's flesh and blood. They, Orca Arya, wake up. With Arya's knowledge as a wizard and Orca's strength as a warrior. Both of their egos coexisted, and they were reborn as magical warriors. There was not a shred of their former self left. Arios wakes up. His unique skill murderer is still intact. He has not forgotten the grudge of being killed by Damrata, and has resurrected to seek greater strength. Myfuriki wakes up. She cannot die, because she has left her sickly brother behind, not here, but in the world beyond, in the world she was meant to live in. So she vows to return. And so, 8 people have awakened. Only one remains. But she is still in a deep sleep. Kagali was dreaming. It was so long ago. A dream from when she was still Demon Lord Kazarium. No. It was a dream from much earlier, when she was just a girl. She can't even remember her name now, but Kagali was a happy princess. Kagali's country was founded on the site where high humans had built a great civilization. It was a paradise for the elf race, a magical superpower that was flourishing thanks to the flowing rivers, lush forests, rich plains, and the ruins of the ancient magical empire. But then, her father, the king, suddenly went mad. Kagali remembered him as a very kind and gentle man. Even so. One day, the king who had been praised as the king of the high elves, suddenly changed into a different person. He changed his name, and began to call himself Jahal, the great magician. Her memory of what happened after that was not clear. Jahal committed tyranny to the utmost. He exploited his people, and sought only his own glory. He repeated his foolish experiments, and created all sorts of nightmares. Kagali was one of those who had fallen victim to this. Kagali, a high elf, was stripped of her powers. She was killed and brought back to life as an undead elf. At that time, she was given an ugly appearance and the name Kazarium. Her beautiful appearance was gone, and she became a cursed figure. Rotten flesh covered her bones. It was so dry that it did not smell of decay, though perhaps that was for the best. Few people knew the secret. Kagali was so grieved that she began to cover herself with a mask. Why are you doing this to me? Jur. Because it's funny. Be happy. Tens of thousands of people died to bring you back to life. Jur. It was a nightmare. She didn't know how her father, who was so kind, had become such a fiend. But because it was real, there was no point in lamenting. Father, I don't care what you do with me. But please think of the people like you used to. Shut up. Are you ridiculing me as well? My daughter no good to me after all. I can't afford to make the same mistake as her. I have instilled my loyalty, but you can't be trusted. Kazarium, today you will be a man. Do you understand? It was an absolute command. Kagali's words never reached his father, Jahal, and the conversation was cut short. She was lucky that she had not been killed. No, it was only because she had already been killed and turned into a faithful puppet that she had not been discarded to be used as a tool. It was then that Kagali parted ways with her father. Then, the nightmare continued. The glory of the arrogant Jahal, the great magician, seemed to know no bounds, but the end eventually came. The reason for this was his foolish attempt to make a puppet of the dragon Empress Milim, which incurred her wrath. Soma, the super magic capital, fell into ruins overnight. It was not known whether Jahal was dead or alive. It was presumed that he was dead, as it was unlikely that he could have survived that flash of light. So Kagali thought more about the people who were important to her than about the dead man. The maidservants who had always looked after her with kindness. The knights who followed her after she became a warrior. Her beloved people who lived happily ever after. Thinking of those she loved, she invoked the forbidden spell. The forbidden spell. Demon Death Birthday. She had already learned the theory of the spell by becoming a test subject herself. The spell was perfected, and Tyr, Footman, and Clayman were born. They were lovely, sweet children, all named by Kagali. And in doing so, she learned a fact she did not want to know. The undead elves created by her spell were not ugly at all. Only Kagali was made ugly on purpose to be so. That hateful father, King Jahal, had taken away her beauty just to make Kagali suffer. Even if she knew that, it was already too late for her to do anything. Kagali's appearance was the result of a curse, and there was no way to restore it. However, the children that Kagali had created did not leave her alone. They too hid their true faces with masks and shared Kagali's suffering. Kagali was not alone, and the hope for survival grew within her. The four of them were then joined by the elf tribes that had survived in various places. Let us rebuild our own country once again. And then, create a country where everyone can live happily. Kagali secretly made up her mind to do so. However, that would become a faint and fleeting dream. The Chaos Dragon attacked and contaminated the land. As a result, all those who adored Kagali were cursed and turned into dark elves. At that time, Kagali also acted as if she was cursed. Kagali and Tyr were able to endure the curse because they were undead elves, but they recognized themselves and lamented that they were different from everyone else. It was fortunate that she had been hiding her true face with a mask and no one noticed her, but it made her even more sad. Tyr's presence was the only thing that saved her. After that, Kagali and her friends abandoned their homeland and fled. Even though they had some regrets, they left together. They wandered around and finally found their next safe haven. When everyone's lives had stabilized, Kagali decided to visit her homeland again. She needed to recover the treasures she had left behind, but more than anything, she wanted to see her homeland again. The city had perished, but it still shone beautifully in her memories. She decided that she had to cut off her regrets and use them as food for the future. And so, she set off, and on her way, she met a man. What, you, if you were watching me, you could have helped me, right? Don't be stupid. Someone like me is no match for that evil dragon. You're being too modest. From my point of view, you look like trouble enough, ouch. The man's name was Sarian Grimwald, the chosen hero who drove away the Chaos Dragon from this land. Unfortunately, he was dying from the mortal combat with the Chaos Dragon. Don't push yourself. Now, the restoration magic. It's useless, so don't do it. The Chaos Dragon's attacks are cursed, and my wounds won't heal. I had prepared several means of recovery, but this is how it is. In fact, Sarian was blown from the chest down, and it was a miracle he was even still alive. The fact that he could afford to laugh despite this showed that he had a tremendous mental capacity. I need you to pass on a message. I'm here to tell you that I defeated Chaos Dragon and died, in style just like a chosen hero. Ha, what chosen hero? Before you die, I have a proposal. With my evil ways, there's a chance you can survive. You may lose your memory, you may end up like this, but are you willing to give it a try? With that, Kagali took off her mask. What he saw was her ugly face. But seeing that, Sarian smiled wryly. What's with you? You've got a good point though. If I just died here, Sylvia would kill me. Considering that, this offer is the best thing that could happen to me. Are you sure? I'm cursed. I'm willing to do evil, rather than be persecuted. If you're chosen hero, I am prepared to become a demon lord and protect everyone. Besides, if you use this evil method, you'll become my puppet, right? I don't care, it's interesting. I'm a free man, and I am not going to be easily controlled. Besides, there is always a cause and effect between a chosen hero and a demon lord. That's how you and I came to be, isn't it? You're an interesting guy, talking nonsense at this point. Then, you can be my puppet. Negotiations were concluded. Kagali took Sarian's words as a joke, but they were true. And as a result of this whim, Sarian became undead himself and survived. That was the moment when Curse Lord Kazarium and Wonder Piero Lapis were born. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy it.